On this day in 1945, during the final stages of World War II, the Boeing B-29 Superfortress Inola dropped the first atomic weapon used in combat on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The B-29 Superfortress played an important role in World War II, particularly in the Pacific theater against Japan. This aircraft was designed to deliver atomic bombs, and its modifications were critical to ensuring the successful execution of this mission. Boeing's B-29 Superfortress was the most advanced propeller-driven bomber of World War II and the first bomber to house its crew in a pressurized compartment. Although designed to fight in the European theater, the B-29 found its home in other parts of the world. In the Pacific, B-29s delivered a variety of air weapons, conventional bombs, incendiary bombs, mines, and 2 nuclear weapons. One of the largest aircraft of World War II, the B-29 was designed with state-of-the-art technology, including a pressurized cabin, twin-wheel tricycle landing gear, and an analog computer-controlled fire control system that allowed 1 gunner and a fire control officer to direct 4 turrets. Long-range machine gun. Design and production costs of $3 billion, equivalent to $51 billion in 2022, far exceeded the $1.9 billion cost of the Manhattan Project, making the B-29 program the most expensive of the war. The B-29 remained in service in various roles throughout the 1950s, being phased out in the early 1960s after 3,970 had been built. Some are also used as flying television transmitters by the Stratovision Company. The Royal Air Force flew B-29s under the service name Washington from 1950 to 1954, when the jet-powered Canberra entered service. The B-29 had a wingspan of 141 feet and a fuselage of 99 feet and weighed 105,000 pounds. To deliver the atomic bomb, the crew had to dive to the right 155 degrees with a bank angle of 60 degrees, losing 1,700 feet of altitude while flying the machine at full tilt. This maneuver was necessary to provide as much space as possible between the bomber and the bomb. On August 6, 1945, Martin's B-29-45 mm dropped the first atomic weapon used in combat on Hiroshima, Japan. 3 days later, it dropped the second atomic bomb on Nagasaki, Japan. The Inola flew as the leading weather reconnaissance aircraft that day. A third B-29, the Great Artist, flew as an observation aircraft on both missions. Development of the B-29 was not without challenges. Major General Curtis LeMay described the plane as having as many bugs as the Smithsonian's entomology department. However, the aircraft ultimately proved to be a deadly and effective weapon in the skies of Japan. The integration of the atomic bomb with the B-29 was a collaborative effort between the Manhattan Engineer District and Los Alamos Scientific Lab. The MED, led by Major Generals Leslie Groves and J. Robert Oppenheimer, worked on the development of the atomic bomb, while the Los Alamos team, led by Norman Ramsey, focused on integrating the bomb with delivery vehicles. The B-29 was chosen for this task because of its capacity and range, as well as General Arnold's refusal to allow non-American aircraft to carry atomic bombs. The Silverplate B-29, a modified version of the aircraft, was designed specifically to deliver atomic bombs. It has no defensive turrets, which were removed to reduce weight and increase speed. The Silverplate B-29 played a critical role in delivering the atomic bombs that ultimately led to Japan's surrender. The B-29 on display. Boxcar dropped the Fat Man atomic bomb on Nagasaki on August 9, 1945, 3 days after the atomic attack on Hiroshima. Boxcar was one of 15 specially modified Silverplate B-29s assigned to the 509th Composite Group. Most B-29s carried 850 calories, machine guns in remotely controlled turrets, 2 50 caliber machine guns, and 120 mm cannon in the tail turret, and 20,000-pound bombs. However, the Silverplate B-29 retained only its tail turret, and its armor was removed to save weight so that the heavy atomic bombs of the time could be carried over longer distances. Designed in 1940 as a replacement for the B-17 and B-24, the first B-29 made its maiden flight on September 21, 1942. In December 1943, U.S. Air Force leadership its range made it well suited for long overwater flights against the Japanese homeland from bases in China. During the last 2 months of 1944, B-29 began operating against the Japanese from the islands of Saipan, Guam, and Tinian. With the start of the conflict in Korea in June 1950, B-29s returned to combat. Although vulnerable to attacks by MiG-15 fighter jets, the Superfortress remained effective against several types of targets throughout the Korean War. The B-29 was the ancestor of Boeing's series of bombers, transports, tankers, reconnaissance aircraft, and trainers. For example, the re-engined B-50 Superfortress Lucky Lady Guy became the first aircraft to fly around the world non-stop during a 94-hour flight in 1949. The Boeing C-97 Stratofreighter transport aircraft, first flown in 1944, was followed in 1947 by its commercial aircraft variant, the Boeing Model 377 Stratocruiser. This bomber-type aircraft derivation was similar to the evolution of the B-17/Model 307. In 1948, Boeing introduced the KB-29 tanker, followed in 1950 by the Model 377 derivative KC-97. The range of large cargo Stratocruiser variants is the Guppy/Mini Guppy/Super Guppy, which remain in service with NASA and other operators. The Soviet Union produced 847 Tupolev Tu-4s, unauthorized reverse-engineered copies of the B-29. 20 B-29s remain on static display, but only 2, FIFI and DOC, are still flying. Before World War II, the United States Army Air Corps concluded that the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, which would become America's primary strategic bomber during the war, would be inadequate for the Pacific theater, which required a bomber that could carry fighter aircraft. Larger loads last more than 3,000 miles. In September 1941, United States Air Force war plans against Germany and Japan proposed stationing B-29s in Egypt for operations against Germany, as British air bases would likely be overcrowded. Air Force planning throughout 1942 and early 1943 continued to deploy the B-29 initially against Germany, and it was transferred to the Pacific only after the end of the war in Europe. By late 1943, plans had changed, partly due to production delays, and the B-29 was dedicated to the Pacific theater. A new plan implemented, at the direction of President Franklin D. Roosevelt as a promise to China, called Operation Matterhorn, deployed B-29 units to attack Japan from 4 forward bases in southern China, with 5 major bases in India, and to attack other targets in this region from China and India, as needed. The area was ultimately chosen over the Guilin area to avoid having to raise, equip, and train 50 Chinese divisions to protect the forward bases from Japanese ground attacks. XX Bomber Command, originally intended as 2 fighter wings of 4 groups each, was reduced to 1 wing of 4 groups due to a lack of aircraft availability, which automatically limited the effectiveness of any Chinese attacks. This was a very expensive scheme, as there was no land connection between India and China, and all supplies had to be flown over the Himalayas, either by transport planes or by the B-29s themselves, with some of the planes being stripped of their armor and weapons and used to deliver fuel. B-29s began arriving in India in early April 1944. The first B-29 flight to an airfield in China was made on 24 April 1944. The first B-29 combat mission was flown on 5 June 1944, with 77 of 98 B-29s launched from India and bombed railway shops in Bangkok and elsewhere in Thailand. 5 B-29s were lost during the mission. None were hit by enemy fire. Forward base in China. On June 5, 1944, B-29 raided Bangkok, reportedly as a test run before being deployed to the Japanese home islands. Sources do not report where they launched from and vary on the numbers involved. -77, 98, and 114 are claimed. The targets were Bangkok's Memorial Bridge and a large power plant. The bombs fell 2 kilometers away, not damaging civilian buildings, but destroying several tram lines and destroying a Japanese military hospital and the headquarters of the Japanese secret police. On June 15, 1944, 68 B-29s took off from bases around Chengdu, 47 B-29s bombed the Imperial Iron and Steel Works at Yawata, Fukuoka Prefecture, Japan. This was the first attack on the Japanese islands since the Doolittle raid in April 1942. The first B-29 combat losses occurred during this attack, with one B-29 destroyed on the ground by Japanese fighters after crash landing in China, one lost to gunfire anti-aircraft at Yawata, and another, a Stockett rocket, disappeared after taking off from Chakulia, India, over the Himalayas. This attack, which caused little damage to the target, with only one bomb hitting the target's factory complex, 50, nearly depleted fuel stocks at the Chengdu B-29 base, resulting in a slowdown in operations until fuel stocks